product that they're building off of the decentralized social graph that they were talking about. We started looking at it a bit last week. Basically, what we've seen so far is that we've got a protocol that allows for concepts that we're very familiar with from social media platforms such as Twitter, where you're able to produce content, you're able to reply to other people's content with content, you're able to like even something called a mirror, which looks a lot like a retweet or a share. The system relies very heavily on NFTs and building NFTs out a lot of the primitives there. We were thinking maybe this week what we do is we do a quick recap to refresh ourselves on the Lens Hub, which is kind of like the central hub where all the action is happening. Josh and David said they also have some things that they'd like to point out there, which we kind of noticed last week, but I think a lot more, like a much better understanding of now. And then we're hoping to move on to the modules. How does that sound, Ben?
Sounds fantastic to me. Yeah, and again, welcome, Josh and David.
All right, cool. Thanks, guys.
So, yeah, should we just jump straight into the Lens Hub, Ben? What do you think?
Let's just jump in.
Cool.
So here we are. I think in the last episode, it was notorious for our worst episode is in sort of like the pre-ramble and not actually really diving into
getting to the code.
I think we got like right up to the start of the first functional contract, and then the thing ended. We explored the events or whatever, but not so much.
We made it. I think we actually made it through the Lens Hub. No, we didn't finish it. I thought we finished it.
Oh, we might have. All right. Well, let's just take it from there, I guess. So Josh and David, you guys have anything in particular you wanted to point out about the Lens Hub that we should jump to, or should we just?
No, just I guess we just scroll down and we just go through it line by line or whatever like that if you want. The main thing is that the hub is in charge of a lot of things, right? Like one of the main things which is really cool with it is this is the contract address that emits mostly every event. Now, what I mean by that is like, because everything's an NFT, like your profile's an NFT, your follow is an NFT. Everything's an NFT. When you do a publication, it's an NFT. You can imagine how quick that can end up being. Many thousands of contract addresses, all emitting events all over the joint. So we made a conscious effort from the get-go to make sure we wrap these events. So when you're listening to these events, you only have to listen to one contract address mainly, which makes integration so much better because from a back-end point of view, if you're and writing the index, right, you don't have to scale your cron task up to look at 10,000 things. You literally, every block that comes in, you scan and get the logs for the one contract address. So that's a huge thing that we've done, which has been a pain point for a lot of things. And you'll also see it in some of these like before transfer events and those things. We have custom transfer events that fire as well. Again, to make this as easy trackable as possible with the pain points that you get with events, trying to scale in it and index them all. So that's an interesting thing about the Lens Hub.
Does that mean you're overwriting the regular 721 events, or you're still
yeah, so they are
you're still emitting them there?
So, yeah, but when you, for example, on the follower of on the follower NFT, if you transfer that away, it will emit a follower NFT transfer event, right? And it will emit the transfer event as well. But because this is all about NFTs and stuff like that, you just imagine how many contract addresses would end up having to, do. And that really makes our backend super quick. Like our indexer is faster than Etherscan and Polygon scan because we just listen out for just the things that we need. So, yeah.
Interesting. This is something also that I don't think that I've really fully understood yet. When you have something like follower NFTs or things like that, how many different contracts potentially are you going to need for this? I think this has to do with kind of the modularity and the extensibility of Lens. I'm guessing that Lens kind of has releasing, but then there might be reasons why other people would also want to release around the same hub. Is that the case?
Yeah, so you got the Lens hub, that hub mints the profile NFTs. And then the follower NFT is minted to is minted when the first person follows, and that's a brand new contract address. So basically, every profile is its own NFT, and then all of your followers on that profile is a different contract address to someone else. So if you had 3 different profiles, you'd have 3 different contract addresses there, basically.
Okay, so each profile on the system will generate its own contract.
Yes.
Now that you say that, I
yeah.
seem to remember seeing that last week, but I'm glad to actually get the review on that also.
Yeah.
That definitely helps explain why you're talking about thousands of contracts potentially, or even millions, to be honest.
I mean, yeah, and in content as well. You know, the initial publication is to the profile NFT, but there's another functionality called collect, which can cause a piece of content to spin out into its own NFT additionally. And so
its own NFT or its own contract.
The publish NFT, right, is so when you publish, you that is its own NFT, and that would not be its own. I don't think that's its own contract, if I remember rightly, but no, that isn't its own contract on every publication. But like, you should see your NFT for collect, right? You've got your publication, which is 1, 2, 3 of your token IDs, and then your publication itself can collect 1,000 of that kind of thing. So that's how it works.
Got it.
And then, like, just to, I guess, deviate a bit from the Solidity part of the Fridays, can you guys talk about the backend infrastructure? Like, do you use the graph to index this, or what are you using?
No. So we've got a lot of experience with Aave, right? And so we've been through pain points. And and the thing that we like when we're thinking about the backend, right? Like, this isn't just data that you might like that you can sacrifice being 2, 3, even 5 minutes old. And we have had problems with the graph before. The graph is fantastic. The subgraph is fantastic. But we wanted to build our own because all this data is highly relational. And that's the strange thing with, like, normally with Solidity code, things don't really care about each other. Yes, they do care, but like not to a level of you've got a profile, then you've got a publication, and that publication now can have many comments. And then in that comment, you've got many comments, and the pointers are completely like unlimited. A pointer can point to a pointer and pointer and pointer and pointer, right? And without building some custom backend and a relational database, you wouldn't be able to query this stuff really, really quick. So we went from 0 and we said, you know what, I think here we're going to build our own indexer. And what we did there is we built our own indexer that only looks at the events that we care about. And we're going to share that code with all our stuff on Aave because it works really, really well. And what that does is it actually decodes the event data and puts it in the database as relational database. So it will put it in the like the profile table and put it in the post table and put it in the comment table. And what that actually gives us is it means on our queries, we are just as quick as Twitter, we're just as quick as Facebook, because all the data is already packed together in this amazing relational structure. So we can join to stuff really quickly. If you want a publication, you can get a publication. If you want all the comments from that publication, we can easily do it with just a really easy SQL query. And we're exposing all of that through GraphQL, which is obviously the same as the graph like schema. And we have a public API that we're going to release to people. So people will be able to build on this really, really easily. Alongside that, like modules and stuff, it's super complex how to redeem them or decode them because they follow a set amount of rules, and obviously they get encoded with a certain order, and they get all this stuff, which if you're not a Solidity dev, it's really hard to understand how you pack that together. Now with the API, you don't have to worry about that. The API deals with all the encoding, all the decoding for you. When it brings back a publication, it tells you like this is going to cost 1, not 0.0000000. Not ones with 18,000, right? And it's all just decoded for you. So yeah, so we're really excited with the backend API and how we approach that.
Yeah, wow, that sounds like it'll be super useful. I've got some friends who are thinking about building on top of Lens. That sounds like very ussul.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Like on the just to give some context, on the API we'll have stuff like your timeline, your followers, explore like popular publications, search, You have authentication baked in, and that authentication JWT token you can use on your own backend if you want. We have everything, and the beauty of it is we've also got a data science team. So we're going to be looking at how we can improve the algorithm, the algorithm for the timeline, the suggestions, and like the people building don't have to worry about this stuff. They can literally just query it and just build. And that's what we want here. We don't want everyone to, yes, we need to have a deeper understanding of the protocol, like all of us want to, but there's people out there who just want to build an amazing UI or just want to build a Bored Apes social, right? And that's what we want to empower. We're a strong believer that the most complex tools need simple tools in front of them so we can have mass adoption, right?
Yeah, I think like the dev experience and just creating those like powerful tools, it's such a killer feature in crypto, especially when there's just like, when I came in probably like just over a year ago into like really getting heavy into the dev stuff in crypto, the dev experience was awful. The tooling was terrible.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I think it's like a really long way since then. But yeah, it's great to just have that like good dev tooling from the start and just like get your hands dirty and just build out the product that you want to build.
Yeah, definitely. It's key because the community are going to drive this, right? Like we can't build everything. We don't know everything that needs to be built. So, you know, giving the dev tool actually benefits the ecosystem of Lens, right? So it's definitely worth us doing.
I definitely, we were building this. There's the two kind of target devs. There's obviously the smart contract and Solidity devs, and we've given them a ton of flexibility in terms of, you know, modularity and modules, you know, we're going to get into later. And then the idea of the API was, let's give front-end devs, back-end devs, people who don't, you know, necessarily aren't experts in blockchain, but are experts in so many other domains, and just give them the tools they need to build as well. And lower the barrier of entry to building on top of Lens in any way, shape, or form. And also kind of building in queues to help users, whether it's functionalities like meta transaction or relayer, to allow things to basically be gasless to the user, to, you know, using these APIs where you're a backend dev, you don't even necessarily know there's a blockchain behind it.
So actually, on a bit of a side note, if I could, or maybe moving the conversation kind of back towards me, we've got a question in chat. The best analogy I've got off the top of my head for it is in Discord, you can kind of do something that lets you pipe in what game you're playing, or if you're listening to Spotify or something like that. What that means is that there's an ability to kind of associate nearly arbitrary data with a profile there. Like, you know, does Lens have the ability to also, I guess through Lens itself, have something like, you know, a link to a Steam profile or something of that general sort, so that you could build plugins that then kind of allow you to associate other data with your profile?
Yeah, so do you mean like in the Solidity code, or like do you mean like if someone just wanted to build something for it, right?
I guess there would be two ways to look at that, actually. One would be kind of building on top from contracts, or even just an API that's reading the contracts. Like, I mean, it should, just because this is a decentralized protocol, I don't see any way where I couldn't build my own front end that does that on top of Lens. But I'm wondering if they would even associate the data somehow, or have some kind of module or pointer, like on even through Lens, that could be integrated with that. Like, you know, maybe I get a blue check if I have a CryptoPunk, which is a bit of a non sequitur because this is being deployed on Polygon. Something of that general sort.
I mean, you could always do it through, I guess, publications. Like I could always, you know, publications don't necessarily need to just be posts. It can be any kind of data that the profile wants to put out. And so you could say, hey, publication, I'm listening to Spotify. And you know, put somewhere in the metadata, this isn't actually meant to be a post. This is like a status update, or this is a badge almost, right? The publications is just an array. It's a pure array of content you wish to put out in the world. And I use content in a very broad sense. Like you know, most front ends are going to implement that to understand, you know, posts or images or video, but we intentionally didn't limit publications to a certain type of data, to a data type. You know, I think we also, you know, we're going to have a metadata spec that we're expecting when we're ingesting things to a front end, but in the same way kind of OpenSea is a spec they understand for an NFT, but it's not, you're not, as a developer, you're not limited by that. You can define anything you would like.
Yeah,
Cool.
because like just to add to that, like all the publication knows is just a pointer to some metadata, right? And the Solidity contract doesn't know what that metadata is, or as David said, has an opinion on it. So in theory, the publications could be whatever you wanted, to any degree. And on top of that, you've got your profile NFTs, and with that, you can get back to the owner of, and then you can see if that profile owns a Bored Ape quite easily. Because you've got all the cool, because it's just an NFT, like an owner of cool, right? So I think with the way it is, it's very flexible for anyone to build whatever they wanted. There is not there. I don't think there's any limit on what they could not build with the way that this has been laid out.
Mm-hmm. That's very interesting. Yeah, I hadn't realized that about publications. It's actually a really, really interesting point.
Yeah, for sure.
The interesting verification, I'm just thinking through it though, being like, with the deployment on Polygon, I mean, you could optimistically assume that if it's the same address on Ethereum, yeah, I guess you could. Yeah, you could easily assume that the same address on Ethereum, that same address that you're using on Ethereum, that like you can mark that, but you would still need some cross-chain comms, and it'll get really interesting if it's two different accounts. Like doing a verification, you might need.
Yeah.
Like so I'm just thinking, you might need a verifier on the sign message.
Yeah. So sorry, you're breaking up. A tiny bit, but I think I've got what you said. Yeah, like we're actually going to be exposing some of this logic on the back end, where you can sign some data with the wallet, and you can verify that you own that NFT and have that as your profile picture. And we have our crons that check that you still own that every couple of hours. So we're already supporting cool stuff like that to be able to flex your NFTs off on the public API from the get-go. And that's just us just doing a feature that would be super cool. So it just shows how easy it would be. And obviously it's EVM. So if you own that wallet address, you own that wallet address on every EVM chain.
Yeah.
Including C chain, right? Like Avalanche or whatever, right? Like, so yeah, like it's definitely super cool things that you could do with this.
And I would say, obviously Polygon was intentional choice, tons of posting. We're not trying to flood mainnet, make this too expensive. But I would say, we're excited for, Chainlink's got the CCIP coming up, which will allow reading state from other chains. UMA has optimistic oracles. There's tons of Oracle solutions coming online that will allow, if you want to do it trustlessly from contracts, obviously it's the trust dependency on an Oracle, but it allows you to kind of start bringing in data and bringing in state from other chains. So you can start to do things where I have this address on Ethereum, let me read things in. Yeah.
Very cool. So yeah, why don't we give a run through the Lens Hub again, just to see what's going on here. So yeah, we've got Lens NFT base, versioned initializable, Lens multi-state, Lens storage, Lens multi-state. Okay, we follow NFT, collect NFT, which I assume are kind of like NFT factories. I think we did see that last week. I
was going to say,
Josh.
Those were in charge. I pressed the wrong button. Sorry, everyone got to see my face quickly. Those were they're in charge of, like, they will deploy the follower NFT and deploy the collect stuff. That's what they do.
Got it. Okay, so we have some.
Oh no, did William cut out?
Hello?
Okay.
File that's been whitelisted.
Oh, he's back.
Oh, Ben, maybe I'll hand over to you for reading.
All right, sure. So let's, I guess, go from here. We've got the modifiers. Well, I guess we start here. Follow NFT implementation, and the collect NFT implementation. So these are the modules, right?
Yeah, so the follower NFT implementation is what is used to deploy the other follow modules. So that's like the base implementation, and then that would be used to then deploy the follow modules as people follow you. Like we said, you only get deployed a follow module after go on.
Follow NFT. Sorry, I
Yeah,
want to clarify.
sorry,
These
yeah,
are follow NFTs and the collect
yeah.
NFTs.
Yeah. You only get deployed the follow NFT once someone follows you first. So that maps to the initial logic, which deploys that stuff, I think, if I remember rightly.
All right. And it's interesting that these are immutable. So I guess the idea is to not make this too upgradable, and that these are these kind of static modules that will live there.
I would say that, the interesting thing is the Lens Hub contract itself is upgradable. So I think part of the reason we did that is that when you're in a particular version of Lens Hub, right, you have guarantees, I guess, that all the follows and collects in the place should be the same, and it's kind of up to eventual governance when upgrading the Lens Hub to ensure you're not breaking backwards compatibility. But if you want to introduce new features on the follow NFT or collect NFT themselves, that requires the upgrade of the actual hub itself.
Yeah. Okay. That's quite nice to sort of, I guess you need to then rally the community around upgrading the hub itself before you do that.
Yeah,
exactly.
But just to add to that thing, like if you look in the interactive logic, don't jump to it here. All that it does is it clones that implementation of the follower NFT and then deploys it for every follower NFT. Same with collect NFT.
And I guess while we're on this topic of community and upgradability, can you touch on anything about a governance token?
David.
So yeah. So Lens right now is it's just contracts. We are going to be doing a deployment on Polygon with a multi-sig controlling governance and treasury, and details on that should be coming out shortly. But we've seen a lot of speculation. There's no token right now. This is just we're just builders, and we've put out a series of contracts for a community to build on top of.
Yeah, fair enough. Hey, like we don't want to get too stuck into the whole when token ramble.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what percent of the Discord right now is when Lens token? Anyone have data on that?
Yeah, it definitely didn't help when the Defiant put out an article that said at one point, join this channel. It looks like it's used for token drop. We love the Defiant. They put out a great video describing Lens protocol, but it definitely did cause a lot of flood. But I would say the Discord's been a great place. We have a bunch of dedicated channels, people talking about what they're building, and it's been some of the stuff the community's already built has been super incredible. We've already got like a social graph explorer. Kind of demo sites to create content and profiles, kind of building a really basic front ends. Again, that's before we've even done the API. So Discord definitely is a little bit when tokeny right now, but we still have a bunch of great devs building in there, and a lot of great fruitful discussion and channels about the protocol and brainstorming channel. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can ask even generally about upgradability. So like we're looking at the initialize function over here, and then also from the inheritance, you can see that there is kind of a direction here to make the Lens Hub upgradable, like you mentioned. There's a lot of talk in the dev community in general about like upgradability good, upgradability bad. What made you decide to go? Do you know like what the discussion is around using the upgradable architecture for the hub?
So I think part of our decisions, and we think about things very carefully, is when we want things to be immutable versus upgradable. And we look at it really carefully as we kind of make a list of like what can governance by changing various contracts or upgrading various contracts actually adjust. One thing it can't do is once content is kind of put out there, I can't go back and change it from a governance perspective. And we think that was a very important thing to do, is to say that if content, if profiles, if followers are going to be truly user owned, like we need to make those immutable. And so I think that these change, that's why you see kind of like the follow and the collect itself are immutable. Once those are deployed, those are out there. It's only if I want to start changing future behavior, if I want to put the system in a publish and pause state or bring in new functionality, that's okay. And those are systems we think we're fine with. We've seen them work pretty well with Aave, right? Aave has an upgradable kind of a system associated with it, and so I'd say that's some of at least our design direction. But generally, even when we were in the early design phase, it was a lot of intense thought of making sure that we were intentionally deciding what was upgradable and not upgradable. And I think in the documentation, if not now, we're going to start putting out a very clear list of what can be and what can't be changed.
Cool. All right, so we've got the initializer here. Ben, you want to keep it scrolling?
Sure. So I have
right.
I guess,
yeah, go for it.
just about the set states. This seems like a pretty generic function, just reading it there. Is this in any way similar to sort of the set state paradigm in like a React or Redux thing?
Yeah, so that just turns stuff. Yeah, so like you can pause the protocol basically, and start it again. So I think it's just an abstract to quickly change some state, right? And it's just a generic method to be able to do that. And then it emits an event called state set, I think, if I remember rightly. So yeah, it's just ability for us to pause and restart it if we want. I think it's probably one of the only things that it's used for at the moment. If I'm
there's two states. There's the publish only, which makes the only thing you can do is publish new content, no comment, no mirror, no nothing, no collects. And then there's kind of just the fully paused state, which is no new content can be created whatsoever. Those are kind of like the emergency functionalities that governance will hold.
Okay, that makes more sense there. So it's more just about like the state of the actual protocol that it's in.
Yeah, it's like a global state. Like you've got unpause, publish, pause, and paused. Basically.
Okay. All right. So then we get down into this governance, the governance functions, only governance. So is this some sort of like governance proxy contract that'll be calling these functions?
Yeah. So at the moment we have admin access to the government. Is it David or is it a multi-sig? I'm not fully sure on that.
So in the test deployment, it's an admin. We are planning for the Polygon deployment that we will be doing, and I want to make it clear, code's open source. You want to go deploy Lens, go deploy Lens. But the Polygon deployment we will be doing, we'll have a multi-sig. Details on that multi-sig will be released in the coming weeks. But we always we intend to progressively decentralize.
Yeah, like everything you'll see in the code base has governance kind of built in from the get-go. That was a solid choice that we thought we needed to definitely do. So you'll see these governance stuff and governance methods throughout the code base, really.
All right. And then we have the set state there. We're going down to the whitelist profile creator. All right. So what's happening here? Yeah, this is still only governance.
Yeah.
Passing in.
So
yes, go for it.
Yeah. So I guess for the whitelist, this was another decision we made, right? We're deploying on Polygon, and when you look at kind of how Lens profiles work, once you have them forever. There's no clawback functionality like ENS where there's like a set time for expiry. And so the concern we had is that it's Polygon, it's a cheap network. If anyone can create a profile with like $45, I can go register every single profile name under 10 characters, and that's not a great solution. And so part of the idea here is governance can whitelist contracts to create profiles. For the testnet right now, we have a proxy that lets pretty much anyone create any profile they want. But the idea is by the time it comes to mainnet, governance can whitelist different specific front ends maybe, or it could be even contracts that implement higher level logic, like an auction system, or maybe some other wrapper system that does implement, like timing functionality or some form of deposit or some form of auction. So that was the idea behind whitelisting profile creator is, again, let the base protocol be pretty unopinionated. Here's a profile because you've asked for it, and let other kind of modules or other contracts implement higher level logic.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that makes sense.
And then, and on top of that, we've got claiming of handles. So we obviously are big fans of ENS and all these things, and we want to be able to reserve people so they can claim it. So at the moment, our backend has a relay who can call this to create profiles on demand, and we have claim logic. So anyone who's signed the Twitter stuff and eventually will be ENS and all these things will be able to claim their handle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There'll be some logic on that.
Yeah.
Sweet. I think we're like sort of halfway through our slot now. Should we move on to another part of the code? Where would you guys like to or recommend going next? What's the interesting, juicy stuff?
I would say
We're
the
talking about models.
the modules
Sorry, yeah, go for it, Josh.
are pretty cool. The modules. So maybe I can explain what each of these things are and how you would attach them to a publication or a profile, so we have a bit of context, maybe.
All right. So where do we start in modules? I guess modules based it's being inherited.
Yeah, so we can probably start on we can just probably go from the top, the more top level. So collect, we can start with collect ones, just like
all right.
So collect modules are ability for anyone to create a module which will react when someone collects it. So we have 2, 4, 6 different ones at the moment. In there we have empty collect modules, which mean you can collect for free. Fee collect modules is a fee. Limited means 1,000 and a fee. Limited time means 24 hours. It's hard coded and a fee and 1,000 limit. Revert means no one can collect your publications. That was a key thing. We wanted to make sure if you post a picture of your family that people can't just collect it. And then you've got timed fee collect modules. So these are the ones that we're going to support off the bat, but collect modules allow you to do whatever you want, basically. So if you open one,
yeah, I just want to quickly just jump with a little, I guess, a high thing. It's just specifically define collect. That's the ability to take a publication that you've put against up of your profile, and people can come in and then turn it into its actual own standalone NFT. So using fee collect as an example, if I post a really good photo, someone can come in, and I'm using the fee collect module. I can say, hey, for 0.1 ETH, you can mint this into an NFT, and it allows arbitrary kind of marketplace logic to be done against any publication.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that's really interesting. I didn't see that. I don't think we saw that the first time we went through it, but that's really cool. How it can be. So. We're starting to really see like where the modularity comes in, and you can have like specifically the revert module. Wouldn't have thought of it, but like seems very vital actually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And all of them are their own contract addresses. These modules are. So any time that you want to deploy another module, you deploy a new contract address for your module. And when you publish a publication, you pass that contract address as the collect module that's used. And they all conform to an iCollect module. So they all conform to an interface, which they have to write certain logic in there to conform to a module, basically.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Should we, okay, so follow next, I guess?
Yeah, cool. So follow is, so you've got your publications, and now this is about your your profile. So you've got approve follow module, which means that you have to approve someone to be able to follow you. Remember that only your followers can collect. So this is a really cool thing to be able to approve your followers, basically. Do you know how you're private on Twitter? Kind of.
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
Yeah. And then you've got a fee follow module, which says I want to charge 1 ETH for someone to follow me. That could be cool because you might be an artist that drops 12 bits of art a year, and instead of having something else, you have your social attached to that, and people can follow you and get your NFT and collect it. And then you've got a follow validator follow, which I don't know what that one is actually. Sorry.
That's a meta contract. That's a meta contract. It just helps out with with certain types of verification.
I've not seen that before.
Yeah. No, we just have the two right now, but there's interesting ones we've seen focus the community building. One that I've seen super interesting is fee follow module, but it's not fixed. It's as people continue to follow you, the price goes up over time. And we've also seen people try to start to do subscription functionality. So kind of redirecting such that the follow NFT doesn't end up directly in the wallet of the person following. It ends up in a contract, and kind of this wrapper is issued. And if you don't keep paying every now and then, the NFT gets taken away from you. And so it's kind of what we like about the modularity is, right? Follow modules decide how the actual follow NFT is issued. And it allows you to build really powerful higher level functionality. Again, kind of going with the overall design of Lens protocol is let's keep things really basic and unopinionated on the protocol side, and let these modules and let higher level contracts build in these kind of more complex structures.
Yeah.
So how would something like mirror work for someone who's going in the kind of paid account direction or the private account direction?
Can you repeat one more time? Sorry, the first
Sorry,
word cut out.
I didn't catch that.
Oh, mirroring, kind of like the retweeting.
Oh, okay.
How would that, like, for a
So
private account though?
That's actually brings us perfectly into the last type of module, which is the reference module. And reference modules are applied to individual publications. And currently we also have only the follower only reference module, which basically says you can only mirror or comment if you are a follower, and reference modules kind of control who can reference certain content. So the way to think about mirror and to think about comment is those are publications, but just kind of like a special class of publication, right? A comment has to kind of reference another publication and has its own content. Mirror doesn't have its own content. It just references another publication itself. And the keyword there is reference. They have to conform to whatever the reference module is. And again, we can say that if you want to comment on this post, you have to pay 0.1 ETH or 5 Matic. You can also do tons of other very interesting logic. I could put a reference module on a post that says, hey, not only have to be following me, but you also have to be following Solidity Friday, or you also have to be following Vitalik. So you can do any kind of, again, arbitrary logic to decide who can comment or mirror on a given post.
And I think just to add to that, it also adds ability, thinking about the social stuff we're building on the blockchain with NFTs and stuff. You have the power to say only Bored Ape holders can comment on this. Only Bored Ape holders can follow me. The social narrative is huge here, I think.
Yeah, this is it kind of blows my mind, like specifically like taking into account the composability and the sort of the parallelization of everyone building in Web3. There's so much stuff going on at the same time, all composable with each other. It sort of has this like exponential growth effect. And I can just see how like the stuff you've got here is just like this breeding ground for like just exponential growth built on top of it.
Yeah, for sure. That's what we wanted, for sure.
Yeah. All right. So in the, I guess not within the subfolders of the modules, but is there anything here that we should go into?
They're more just the base stuff. You can click in them, we can scroll through them, and if there's anything that you see.
Maybe an abstract question before you. If my internet works, I guess we'll see. So I see modules for collecting, for following, and then we just walk through what the reference modules are. What's interesting is I don't see any modules off the bat for the actual base public. Is there something I'm missing logically about that, or is it just kind of just a matter of time until someone thinks of something good for that too?
What do you mean for the base? So for the base publication, I think it's, and this is kind of why we left publication pretty open, is that, again, as I said, the publication, it doesn't care about where things are stored. It doesn't care about what the content is. I think we've already made it pretty open. And I think that, if we later on need to see something with publication, but I think that that's kind of handled in these modules themselves, right? The modules kind of say how you can interact and engage with content, but the content creation itself is completely open. I think, as we said, like a publication can be any arbitrary piece of content. It could be things as simple as a status could be passed through publication, or it could be kind of what we envision it as, which is just, hey, here's a post, hey, here's an image, hey, here's an audio file, here's a video, here's another contract, here's contract code, git commit or something. There's all kinds of different ways to think about social graphs and what the content on social graphs are. And so I think, we tried to make, and I think the community will tell us if we succeeded in this goal of making the publication itself pretty wide open and fully flexible. And as I said, we're going to have a metadata spec that kind of shows what we will be attempting to conform to, at least for a UI that we are building. But anyone can build anything on top of publication. We've tried to leave that
Very cool.
The widest possible spec.
Very cool. That makes a lot of sense.
And because you've got the metadata, as David said, like you can do what you want. Like for us, we're setting like a source. So in a publication, you could tag a source, right? And then say that's Bored Apes or say that's something else. and that source then could be used to query the data, right? So you can segregate your publications like using just metadata. So yeah.
And I would say I think I kind of need to always expand and help me think about use cases for this beyond standard socials, just to think about how can we put other models into this social graph feature. So for example, like a profile could be an events company, a publication could be a specific event. Hey, I'm hosting an after party at ETH Denver. And then every time somebody collects, that's an issued ticket, right? So I think social graphs are a pretty fundamental data structure in at least in Web 2. And we've only really associated them with social media. I think that's kind of how we've begun to limit our thinking, but many other applications and entire models are built on top of social graphs. And so encourage folks to really think wide about what these patterns allow to build.
I was actually just kind of randomly going on a mental tangent about in-game comms, like Discord kind of originally wanted to do. Like wondering, I have a feeling there's some way to make a half-decent integration there. Might be annoying if you have to like alt-tab out to like sign MetaMask each time, but yeah, like you're saying, once you have really open modularity. And I really understood what you said there about the actual publications themselves. Really, it's just a matter of as far as anyone who's looking at this can push their own creativity.
Yeah, for sure.
So should we take a look at this space?
Yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So what we got here?
I think there's module
Errors on everything.
It's
probably module global might be a better one, or you could actually like load up one of the modules.
I would go to
like collect.
Yeah. You can also go to the interfaces. I think show the interfaces for each of the various modules. So under interfaces there,
Alright.
I collect module, so and then I follow module, so it shows the interface you have to conform to. And this is the only thing that I guess a module has to do is implement the expected functionality. But besides that, everything else, all the intermediate logic is fully open.
Yeah. So the rules are all defined for you, basically.
All right. So this is the collect module, the interface. All right. So what do we have here? We have initialize publication collect module. And it takes a profile ID, a uint, a publication ID, a uint, and then some arbitrary call data bytes.
So that data is you're defining how they redeem it. So if that takes an address and a uint 256, that's where you define that. So you're saying like if you go and look in a collect module, you'll see how that's defined basically.
In the collect module.
If you
go to
limited fee, something like that would probably be a better one.
All right. Here we go.
So it decodes the data. So you're setting some information about this, right? So remember the publication itself is setting this data. So you are setting like how much it's going to cost, how many there is, the address that the money goes to, and a few other things. And that's what the data is basically.
Wow. Yeah. That's a really nice sort of abstract, not abstract, but generic way to pass in some data. You can just decode it. I see here in this one I saw, okay, well this is returning
it doesn't
zero there.
Return 0,
Yeah, that's fine. But let's compare it, I guess, to here where we were getting a whole different type collection of data.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like again, it doesn't care. It's not got an opinion on the data. That data could be anything, and it's up to the module to decode it and then set it up basically.
All right, awesome. Yeah, very cool. Okay, sweet. And so that's just the initialize publication module, and then we have after that the process collect. So let me just read here. The process is a collection action for a given publication. This can only be called by the hub, and so we pass in the reference to profile ID, the collector address, the profile ID, and the publication ID, and then again some generic data. What's the difference here between the referrer profile ID and a standard profile ID?
So I think you can scroll, if you scroll up over there at the top, I think it should describe it, but I believe this is if you're collecting it off a mirror. So if I post a really cool piece of content, an image, and Josh wants to share it or mirror it in Lens speak, you can make it like a retweet. And then you see it on Josh's feed and collect it, right? If for some reason in my collect module, I wanted to pass along part of the fee that I receive, if I'm charging a fee to Josh, I can define that. And so the referrer profile ID would be Josh, because he was the mirror, you would be the collector, and I would be the actual original profile ID.
Okay.
And that allows to reward people for curation.
All right. Yeah, that's very cool. So that makes sense.
So you could probably see that if you open up that collect module again, you probably see how that is right. So you see there, you've got a referral fee in the init stuff, which you define there. That can be 0, right? But you can say 1% of anything that's mirrored and collected, I give to the referrer itself. And then in the process collect, you'll see that it pays it out, basically.
Process collect. All right, so we've got some checks here. We said referred with an error of the limit exceeded. Okay, so this is where we're paying out. There we go. Okay, so if it's the same person, if it's just sort of that base profile and not a mirrored one, we just do the process collect. There's also a sort of a variant with referral that we can do.
And big shout out to our friends at PeckShield and also Code Arena. Just finished up the audit contest. Found a lot of nice edge cases there. So I know a bunch of Solidity devs on this. Audits are great tools and help you find things. Nobody is perfect. Yeah.
Especially when it's like at this like level of complexity. There's just so much room.
Lots of callbacks. Yeah, lots of callbacks.
Stack too deep and all, hey.
All right. That actually was like super helpful, I think, just to go through this interface.
It's probably worth doing, follow next, I think it kind of conforms to similar rules, but name of follow, basically.
All right, so
follow.
Yeah.
Let's say follow really simple. Just the only thing you have to take in outside of your arbitrary data is obviously what's the profile you're following. Besides that, everything else is definable by the specific module.
Yeah, that makes sense that you need to at least pass in this. What other data might be passed in here?
So I think if you jump into the fee, the Followup Fee, under the follow, so the fee follow module, right? Yeah. You would define a currency and an amount. So in this case, let's say it costs 15 Matic. I would drop the Matic currency address and then the 15 plus the associated number of zeros to deal with the decimal, as well as a recipient who's the fee actually go to. And again, like that's defined by the module itself. As you can see, it's still taking in the profile ID. Everything else is done in this kind of the encoded ABI.
All right. Yeah. Got a little bit lost here. Where's the follow module? All right, sweet. Okay. Yeah, so I'm starting to just like mentally piece together thinking like how I would build on top of this and stuff. So I was like seeing what sort of data you can pass in here, what you can play around with like on that follow action, or on that collect action. And it's all like starting to slowly come together. It's like really exciting. All right, so then we go down. We've got a process follow. So this is the initialize the module. So we initialize the module with those rules from the data. And then we've got process follow after that, which was, I assume, would have an on the actual follow action.
Yep.
All right. So and that takes the address of the follower, the profile ID that they're following, and then again arbitrary data. So let's go over to, gosh, so many tabs. fee collect. Is it this one? No.
It's down one there. Yeah.
There we go. I like the fee follow module. I like this guy. So process follow, and we're going to charge a fee. All right. So this is the amount that has been set up here as the fee to follow someone. All right, sweet. So we're just taking that. Can you talk about the gas efficiency? I'm not sure if you guys can touch on that, but in reading off the struct sort of piece by piece here.
Yeah. So Peter did most of obviously these contracts and gas stuff. I think he tried to optimize it as much as he can with still making it readable. I think you can optimize it and not have these variables and put everything in, but then it becomes unreadable. So I think he's tried his best to make it as optimal as possible, but still, as you see here, it's very easy to understand what this method does. I think that was the idea.
Okay, sweet. Yeah,
I think, as I mentioned earlier, like we just finished up an audit with Code Arena, and we had this whole side bounty for gas optimization. So still working through a ton of the awesome suggestions sent by the wardens over there. So definitely plenty of room to optimize. But yeah, I think we always try to strike the balance, at least for first code we're putting out, things that are very well optimized, but also readable and allow steps to build on top of.
Yeah. We've kind of covered a few different projects here on Solidity Fridays, and they range all across the spectrum from that side of like hardcore gas efficiency via like Transmissions 11 and some of the stuff in Soulmate and in the Rory code base. And then on the other end, a few projects that are especially when they're deployed, when you know you're going to deploy on lower cost chains where it's not as like sensitive to gas prices. It's actually quite nice to have that readability, especially when you take into account that you're building this for other devs to build on top of. Then I guess readability is very important.
Yeah, definitely. I think part of the issue here is we also have to worry about, we are going to be on low cost chains. At least we designed for a low cost chain. This is a very high volume application, and so gas at scale definitely does matter. When we're dealing with potentially millions of profiles and millions of publications, every gas save does help prevent DDoS attacks, etc.
Get to see if Polygon stays a low gas chain, eh?
Maybe not.
We are working closely with our friends at Polygon, and we have faith that this, at least for where the state of things sit right now, they're the best partner. Low gas, tons of integrations, composability is key to the whole lens system. It's EVM, we're EVM maximalists here at Aave, and they're building a ton of great stuff in the ZK space. I know we believe that ZK is the future, and when that's ready for prime time, for real production ready apps, I think you'll eventually hopefully see this migrate over. At least that's my long-term vision. But I think for right now, it gives us the security guarantees of Ethereum through kind of the commit chain process, while still giving us plenty of room to scale and actually build on.
Cool. So the truth is, actually, just because I'm a bit conscious of time, I know we have 5 minutes left. There was also a different kind of general question I wanted to ask, which is looking through the hub. So you've got like the functions there, like create profile or post or all of the basic actions that users take. We've been kind of following the modules that can act almost as a middleware inside of that. A lot of the functions there have SIG version and a not SIG version. So you've like post and post with SIG, I think, and a few others. So there's all of these functions that seem to do the same thing, but with a signature. What's going on with like this kind of signature duality over?
Yeah, so I think there's a few ways to think about it. Number one, if we're talking about low cost chains, getting Web 2 users on and having them pay every interaction might not be feasible on a high cost chain. So that gives ability for people to bake in their own relay, be able to send that from their own address and pay the gas for the user. So we've done with SIG methods on all of that stuff. And on top of that, people might actually want to use the with SIG methods, normally, because that's type data stuff. and that might allow people to understand what they're actually signing. So I think there's two directions there, you know.
So the basic idea here is that maybe you'll be able, like, or maybe Lens or someone else might set up kind of gas proxies in the middle to allow for users to interact kind of with the Web 2 experience that we're familiar with.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like, because it accepts a type data SIG, right? People will just be able to sign that and then send it without them paying gas. But I think it also benefits just normal UI, right? Like with the type data, you actually get to understand a little bit of what you're calling rather than, you know, just calling the contract method directly. So like people could call that themselves and get the type data structure. So I think it's very powerful methods to be able to allow people to relay these transactions
That's
really easily.
A really interesting point. That is actually a really interesting point. I don't know if I've thought about specifically designing Solidity for wallet UX.
Yeah,
but that's actually like, yeah, data actually get used better and better in front-end interfaces. Like Lattice, I think, really kicked off a lot with the EIP 712 work that they did. But as we see that kind of get better and better for UX, like towards a world where maybe we actually look at what we're transacting with before we just like smash the button a few times because we're tired of looking at hexadecimal like raw data. Even just adding this in to give you that wallet UX, that's actually that's a super interesting point.
Yeah, for sure. And it's key. Like, as you say, when things start getting better and better with the type data, like having this be used just for general use, even if the person's paying for gas, is going to be great for the UI to show them what are they signing, what am I actually signing, right? So yeah.
Very cool. Do you know if Aave has plans on putting in some kind of guest sponsorship in the beginning for users, or it's like, is there like, who would you see, I guess, setting up proxies if you're looking at the proxy path?
So, you know, I would say, right, I think that we've teased that we are working. Obviously, we have the APIs. We're giving a public API. You know, the relayer that Josh spoke about at the start is fully open, and then also Aave is working on its own UI. I would also say that we have been very intentional about releasing Lens first, releasing the API next, and really giving developers time to build and build on this platform, right? We could have launched our front end day one, launched our API day one, but this is really meant for a community to build on top of. And so while Aave at some point will probably put out a UI, it's meant to be one, not all of them. And potentially we may do gas sponsorship on there. I think we're still definitely obviously have to work out economics for that. But you know, think about it. If I, you know, let's say I wanted to use an evil Web 2 business model. If I'm making ad revenue off of users using my service and everything else, right? How am I going to convince users to post, especially if they have to pay for all of the posting fees? Well, then it's in my own interest to subsidize the gas for it. And there are plenty of other models to do so. And I think gas subsidy is something we're going to see becoming more and more common, particularly on low cost chains. You know, you have services like Biconomy and others. And so I would say that there's others doing it already. I think Lens is continuing in that tradition. I think you will start to see more and more dApps come out where the front ends themselves are covering gas for the users, particularly on low cost chains. Gas is necessary for the functioning for blockchains to function properly, but not really things that should ever be exposed to end users.
Very cool. Cool. So I think maybe we will try and stop it here if that's okay, unless anybody has like a last comment or anything like that. But yeah.
Oh, good.
Awesome.
Oh, definitely. Thanks for having us.
Really super interesting. Yeah, thanks a ton for coming. Especially the 3:30 a.m. like, you know, vigil. Greatly appreciated. This has been really, really huge. A lot of really awesome stuff going on here. Like I guess from my end, I'm always amazed by like how much there still is to learn, like how many new things there are to think of. But yeah, awesome. So this has been our 2 weeks on Lens Protocol. Give it a look. Pumped at where this goes, what people build on top of it, and thanks for hanging out with us on Solidity Fridays.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate hosting.